Thank you, Marissa. I lost 3 pounds. Better than last year, I gained 2. But I'd like to welcome everyone to this very, very comfortable May Sunday morning. Last night, Cheryl and Kelvin Mark took Patty and I to see Motown, the musical. It was great. You know, I was revisiting most of my youth for about 3 hours last night, and I woke up from a dream this morning. When Patty woke me up, I said, Tammy Terrell and Marvin Gaye were singing to me, you know. It's great. But, this has been a very, very thoughtful time for Reverend Patty and I. We know that after today, we only have one more Dharma school service with you here in this beautiful Sacramento Betsuin Hondo. This has been our home for the past 32 years, and I'd like to welcome back Satsuki and Carrie to their Sacramento Betsuin Hondo also. They moved to Berkeley, but this will also always be home. And last week we had the Hatsumairi service introducing 5 new babies to our Sangha, and I had the honor of marrying all 5 of the couples that brought their babies, and it was a very memorable Hatsumairi ceremony. And in the last few years, I've noticed that we are welcoming more and more young Dharma school children to our program whose parents were very, very young Dharma school students themselves when Patty and I first came here in 1984. And we know that being a part of this Betsuin and this incredible Dharma school has given Reverend Patty and I a sense of fulfillment that will only grow more meaningful as each year passes. As we prepared for our last weeks of our last Dharma school term, we found ourselves reflecting on how we felt when we first came here as very much younger versions of ourselves. Patty and I actually had a plan. We had a vision. And here's the backstory on that plan, on what we had hoped to accomplish when we first came here. As most of you know, I grew up attending the San Francisco Buddhist temple from about the age 5. I had numerous perfect attendance awards and 1 or 2 day absence awards. And then when I was about 16 years old, I stopped going. I discovered a great interest in girls, and I just followed my curiosity. And back then, I think if I was interested in a girl and she went to Christ United or Pine Methodist or the Kong Kong Kyo Church, I would go there, check it out, you know. I mean, yeah, I had to follow my curiosity. Then, in the mid-1960s, as a psych major at UC Berkeley, I remember very well a class where we were discussing dimensions of our childhood that impacted on personality development. And religious upbringing was certainly one of them. In the 60s, America's college counterculture was moving away from traditional religions. Many people began looking to the East for a fresh sense of spirituality. In the class, during that time in the class, student after student, when they talked about what religion they were, they claimed to have no religious affiliation. I'm agnostic or I'm atheist, they would say. When I was asked, I also claimed to have no particular affiliation. Then the professor said, maybe I'm asking the wrong question, or you're misunderstanding me. In what religious tradition were you raised? In what religious tradition were you raised? So I, just naturally responded, I was raised a Buddhist. The class went silent. I think someone said, man, that's cool. And remember, this was the 1960s. It seemed the entire class was excited to have a live Buddhist in the class. And he spoke English. In the mid-1960s, counterculture and musical icons of the time like the Beatles and Donovan They were going to India to seek a sense of human spirituality. And Indian music with Ravi Shankar began to influence Western pop music. Eastern music and thought were providing fresh and interesting alternatives to the established Western worldviews. With uncontained excitement, my fellow students were asking me, "What's Buddhism all about? What's Buddhism all about? Tell us." And I didn't know what to say. Here I had just announced that I was raised a Buddhist, and then they said, "What's it about?" And I'm thinking, well, I think that's the first time anyone ever asked me, "What is Buddhism?" And it was only then that I realized that I had no idea. And these are the thoughts that came to my mind. Well, we have these beads and burn incense, and once I made a wheel out of popsicle sticks. I was really feeling totally embarrassed, and I had nothing to say, I once asked my mom what I was like as a child. My mom and dad both raised in Japan, and she described me using one word. I was a little disappointed that she only used this one word, because she used other words to, describe my brothers and my sister. And says, "Well, Mom, what about me? What was I like as a child?" And she said, "Saikina." She said, "You are a saiki," which means clever. And I guess Mom was right, because I got out of that class momentarily looking really good. When I was asked, "What's Buddhism all about?" I said, "Well, how much time left to class?" They said, 20 minutes. I said, "Oh, not enough time." Don't even get me started. 20 minutes. So they said, "How about next class period?" And they're really excited about this. So the professor said, "Okay, well, we can continue the discussion next time." And I said, "Sure." So I had between Tuesday and Thursday to figure out what Buddhism was about. And as some of you have heard me share, I went to the library, to the bookstore, and I heard there was a new young minister at the San Francisco temple where I grew up, and he would become Bishop Ogui, who is now retired, but Ogui Sensei was about 28 years old at the time, and the minister of the San Francisco temple. And in reading and talking with him, I discovered that Buddhism was incredibly sensible. And I thought, how could I leave something without really understanding what it was? And that great embarrassment, well, long story short, I got through the next class pretty good, but that initial great embarrassment gave birth to a deeper curiosity. And for the first time, I was really interested to know more about this tradition we call Buddhism. I wanted to know more about this tradition I discarded without knowing what it was. So once again, I had to follow my curiosity. And long story shorter, in the years that followed, I found myself with a shaved head receiving Tokudo ordination in Kyoto, Japan, 1973. 2.5 years later, 1975, I began my career as a minister at the Los Angeles Betsuin. And when Patty and I came here in 1984, we knew what we hoped to accomplish. Our 5-year plan and our vision was this. We wanted to make sure that every child that came to the Sacramento Betsuin Dharma School would never feel the embarrassment I felt when I was in college so many years before. I wanted instead for each child to know why they were here, and I wanted them to be able to answer. If someone asked them, "So, you're a Buddhist, what is Buddhism?" My hope was that their response would be, "Well, how much time do you have?" We also wanted them to be very proud of a tradition and a teaching that is so very, very sensible. Through these years, you've heard us say again and again that Buddhism is not a belief system of any kind. Nothing is taught for believing. Everything the historical Buddha taught was taught for testing, like the essential teachings of impermanence and interdependence that we all know well. These were taught for us to test. Is it true that everything is impermanent? Is it true that everything is interdependent and interconnected? And if it is true, then why would we not want to apply this awareness to how we view the world and how we live our lives? So our 5-year plan for wanting to make sure that every child had an understanding of why they were here and what Buddhism was. Well, this was realized, I think, probably within the first 2 years. But you have to understand, when we first came here, there were only 75 Dharma school students in the Betsuin. But I felt like, wow, it's working. When in 1985, I had a brand new 1985 blue Nissan Maxima. And right on, what street was that? Gloria. Right on Gloria, a car came zipping out of an apartment parking lot and broadsided the front of my car. And, there I was, the right wheel well smashed in, right front wheel well. And, traffic was stopped and buses were stopped and cars were kind of, one lane only was open going around us. And I was standing out there looking at my car. Oh, my beautiful new Nissan Maxima. And then Gordon Makishima, 9-year-old Gordon Makishima, was driving by with his mother. She was driving, he was in the passenger seat, of course, 9 years old. And he rolls down the window and he said, "Hey, Reverend Bob, is that your car?" And I went, "Yep, Gordon, that's my car." He goes, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all right." He goes, "Car looks pretty bad." I said, "Yeah." And then he said, "Well, that's dukkha." That's the reality of life. Can be very difficult because things are constantly changing. And that made me smile, right? I said, wow, yes, it's working. And then when Patty and I talked, I said, wow, our 5-year plan is a good plan, so what should we do next? And it was such a good plan, we made it our 32-year plan. So as we wind down our time as ministers of the Sacramento Betsuin Dharma School, we thought it would be nice to share that from the very beginning, we had a plan. We did have a vision. And with the growth and success of the Betsuin Dharma School, this vision has really, I feel, been materialized and has exceeded all of our expectations. And we know that being a part of this Betsuin and this incredible Dharma school has given Reverend Patty and I a sense of fulfillment and purpose that was more than we could ever hope for. And I'd like to thank you all so much for making this Dharma school and this Betsuin the best in all of BCA. Next week, I think I have Reverend Patty on tap to speak too, so I'm announcing that so she can't back out. You're on next week too, also. But thank you again for coming today and every Sunday. Please join me in Gassho. Buddhism is not a belief system of any kind. Nothing was ever taught for believing. Everything has been taught for us to test. Is it true that everything is impermanent? Is it true that everything is interdependent and interconnected? And if it is true, then let us apply this awareness to how we view the world and how we live our lives. Although we are going through a great change here within the Betsuin, we will always be interdependent and interconnected in the karmic fabric of life and love. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.